Hello, everyone. Today's guest, Jess Tomaino. She is the founder and executive director of WAHI Studio. She's going to be one of the artists at our upcoming art gala that will take place on September 23rd at Aqua Restaurant and Banquet. So we're super excited to have her, and you guys, you're going to love what she's going to create at the event. I'm not going to give it away. Just make sure you don't give it away either. You have to be at the event to see what it is. We are not going to tell you what it is. So get your ticket today. But on a serious note, really, Jess, I'm excited that you've agreed to participate in our event and to take the time today to talk to us and share with us a little bit about your story. So welcome.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Honestly, when I first came by your booth at the Kindness Festival and we started chatting, it was one of the easiest, most natural conversations. So the fact that I'm jumping on board today, I go with my gut a lot of the time. So thank you for letting me be part of it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And same here. You know, I was going to bring that up, how we met. And oftentimes that's how it is, that I come across people that I just feel this pull towards, right? That energy, that positive energy that I felt. And I was like, you know what? We've got to figure this out. Let's figure out how to work together. And, you know, the perfect opportunity had presented itself. And when you started telling me a little bit about what you do as an artist, as a nonprofit founder and executive director, I figured, you know what? Everyone else should know about you, about your work, and the impact that you're having on the community. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with everyone about you, about WAHI Studio, what it's all about, and your journey to founding the nonprofit.
All right. So we'll get into it. The first thing everyone asks me is, what does WAHI stand for?
Yes.
It does sound weird, doesn't it, when you say WAHI? I get WAHI, I get different pronunciations, but it actually started as an acronym. It's Wild at Heart Illustration. It's what I started doing business as back in 2011 or 12 when I first started creating art for hire. And I condensed it down to WAHI with Jess when I started teaching. And then when we opened the nonprofit, that's when I just said, you know what, we're keeping it. Fun fact, because it does sound tribal, I looked it up in other languages just to see what would happen. And WAHI is gathering place in Hawaiian. And in Arabic, it means divine inspiration. So we kept it. Yeah, what? I know.
Wow, how perfect is that?
So we held on to it.
That's awesome.
So we started in 2020. Yep.
Oh, wow.
In the middle of the pandemic. We are celebrating our third anniversary in August. So we've done a lot. Thank you. In 3 years. Pretty much at that time, I had lost 2 jobs in a span of a week during COVID. So I kind of got to the point where I'm like, you know what, let's rip the Band-Aid off and just do the thing. So that risk taking, the fundraising that went to starting to pay all our legal fees to get started, we were able to kind of crunch down to like about a month and a half, find a location and just get going. What started the whole idea, I've always been an artist. I had conversations with my guidance counselors in high school about how I didn't need chemistry. I wasn't going to need it. So for me, I've always been on this path. To actually start a nonprofit though, to really get there, I found my love of teaching in 2018. I taught at another local art studio. Hours weren't really conducive with working families, so I ended up leaving there. Started teaching independently at a table in a coffee shop in Lockport for years.
Wow.
I would sit all day Saturday, one kid after the other, and we'd do lessons all day long. Wow. That's Steamworks Coffee. If you've ever been there, they're incredible. So when went to teaching, that was, of course, what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to be an art teacher. I just didn't go the traditional route because, you know, life happens, right?
Oh,
met my husband, had some kids, you know, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. I know that all too well. Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, what's meant for you always ends up finding you in the end. So came all the way back around. What got me to start though, and this is kind of on the deeper side of things, art is a healing medium. In 2019, I had my daughter, my second born, Fiona. I had suffered horribly with postpartum depression. Like it was the day of, I knew something was wrong, something wasn't right, just went through a lot of things, didn't really know how to communicate that I needed help, didn't know what was normal, what wasn't. A lot of women don't.
Right.
I had experienced anxiety and depression with my first as well, but not to that extent. So it unfortunately led me to a point where I was ready to take my own life. And I was on a bridge, and I had my first, and for those that are faithful would understand this, I met Jesus on a bridge. And my life wasn't over yet, and I had work to do. So I got back in, I had a car full of groceries and everything. Got back in my car, went home, looked at my husband, said, I need help. And he said, okay, let's do it. And I started therapy that week, got on medication, which saved my life at the time. And then I threw myself into art. And I've always been an artist, but I was experimenting. I was doing, a dog a day, because at the time I was doing a lot of pet portraits. So dogs were a very common theme. And it really working at it and exploring things, mediums I've never touched in my life. And just in that time, I found a way to heal, and I wanted to show that to other people. So that's really what, like, the heart reason for getting into opening the nonprofit is knowing that I was going to come across people that had suffered, and I wanted them to learn that they could heal and use art to do that. Art is we learn how to paint before we learn how to write.
True. Yes.
It's connecting that inner child and finding that joyful place and working from it. And sometimes you have to go through some heavy stuff before you hit that joyful place.
That is so true.
So and I say we, because as a nonprofit, you're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
I met some wonderful people in my life all at that time. It was just one after the other. You seemed to line up. And we decided to make a safe space to come in and create, and not just learn about art and techniques. Like anyone could take an art lesson, but can they take a art lesson that involves throwing paint, literally throwing it, like expression in a different way? So that's how WAHI got started. Was I took this, leap of faith. This year before, I was in the lowest low, and the year after, built a nonprofit. And the year after that, I lost the count of how many children we worked with. Like, it's incredible. So that's how we got started.
Oh man, I'm getting so emotional here. I'm just trying to keep it together. Thank you so much, number one, for being vulnerable and for sharing that with us, because I'm sure that took courage to open up and talk about that, because I know it can be a difficult topic for women to speak about. So thank you so much. It's so helpful to have this information. And the one thing I just want to add, I'm so grateful that you're here with us today.
Me too.
And I believe there's a word in the Bible that says, he who begins a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. You were at your lowest lows. Yes, you were on your way to potentially take your life, but at the end of the day, your work is not done.
Oh, no.
Your work isn't done. So, and God knew that ahead of time. And, but you didn't know. But he met you there. But he met you there where you were, right? And it is so true that a lot of times we have to hit that rock bottom to really be transformed and to bring light potentially to others. So thank you so much for sharing that and for the services that you offer, because that is so important. So speaking of that, do you work with women's groups?
We haven't exclusively worked with women's groups. We end up, what happens? People bring their kids in, and next thing you know, I'm working with mom and dad too.
Great. That's
like
beautiful.
it's a, it spills over. Like
Yeah.
my cup runs over and it helps other people. So that's how it happens.
Yeah.
I would love to work with veterans. I would love to work with specific groups. Now we were in a very small space when we first got started. We recently moved our studio space. Like what you see behind me is actually part of a 50-foot wall. It's rather large. So we could do groups of 24 plus.
Oh,
No
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yes, it's very
That
good.
is incredible. So if anyone wants to partner with you, work with you, what does that process look like? How can they contact you? How do they make that happen?
So we are registered as a 501c3. We
Okay.
are a charity. Every year we dedicate a certain number of work hours towards charities. Like we were at the Buffalo City Mission last week. We did a kids art program that was 3 hours, and we brought a bunch of stuff and worked with 17 or 18 children. So we do things like that on donation. And then we also, what keeps our doors open, lights on, is doing groups. I've worked with like college kids, team building, things like that. And they end up reaching out to me. They say, hey, we kind of like, based on your website, you do this. Can we do that? And I like tailoring it to the group specifically. It is not a one size fits all. If I have a group that is in the medical field, we're going to talk a little bit more about what they go through in the medical field. It wouldn't apply to a bunch of Girl Scouts, right?
Right,
So,
right. For sure.
Usually there is a deposit or a game plan that we talk over. We work by invoice. We are for hire in that regard. As the studio, I am also for hire as an artist outside of that. So it depends on what the need is. Canisius College, last year we worked with them. We did a decompress day, and we had like the end goal was to have some new artwork for their building and let students let loose. So we ended up doing splatter paint wooden letters, and now they hang up in their common areas.
Oh, I love that.
Go by and they point to it. Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
like, but if I hadn't talked to them, would I have gotten the letters for them? Probably not. So it's kind of like there is a open conversation to what's your goal, what kind of feelings do you want people to walk away with. I am finishing up a mural project at Hilbert College right now. I love working with higher education. It's great. And there were 7 pillars in one of their buildings, and the goal was to make it feel more homey.
Okay.
And less like institutionalized, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
First thing a student said to me is like, this is probably one of the coolest things Hilbert's ever done. I'm like, oh, cool.
See?
And then
Mission accomplished.
like, right? So I'm like,
Yeah.
And another one's like, this actually feels really warm and inviting. I'm like, so
That's
I went to the woman that hired me and said, hey, it's doing what you want it to do. This is what I'm hearing. So that's the kind of thing I get brought on for. So
that's beautiful. And I'll be sure to link your website. So I assume they go to your website, right? Okay, perfect. So I'll be sure to link that so everyone knows where to go to get more information and to connect with you, tying in with the work that you're doing. You once said that you're a gym for creativity. I love that so much. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, we got about 2,500 square feet in here and tons of art supplies. Initially, when you think of a gym, you think of an open space with a bunch of machines on it. You go there, exercise, you might take some classes, things like that. That's kind of what we are, but with art materials. So you come in, we have it's called a punch pass. It'll be right on the website. You get 5 sessions. So you come in during the open studio hours posted on our calendar. It's free range. So if you're like, hey, I want to try art journaling, like we have all the stuff in here for it. Have you ever tried charcoal drawing before? We have that too. You didn't have to go to Michael's and spend the money to start something you don't know anything about.
Yeah.
You know, we're able
Can
to
I
introduce you.
ask you real quick?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but did you say art journaling?
Yes.
What is that? I've never heard of art journaling.
1 second.
Okay.
So behind me, actually, see those rainbow cards?
Yes.
Those are papers organized by color.
Okay.
And then there's 2 other cards that you can't see, full of donated scrapbooking, cardstock, magazine, sheet music, you name it, cards, things like that. And we get to collage and we mix them together. So if you don't know how to draw, that's fine. We have something to do here.
Very cool.
This is the Cadillac of art journals. It's
Ooh,
rather full.
that's
This
huge.
is my first one.
Huge.
We give these, sometimes we get to give these away for free, which is really exciting whenever we get a grant.
Mhm.
This one is inspired by a student.
Wow. Oh
She
my
drew
God.
this. This one she
So
did end up
cool.
taking home. She left me a note.
She did. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So they kind of, it's like a collection of things, kind of similar to a scrapbook, but these pages can hold up a little bit better. I've dumped an entire thing of ink by accident on a page in here, and it didn't
Oh,
like bleed
oh,
through.
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
so they're pretty sturdy. We went on a field trip to the zoo, and the only thing with rubbings was at the giraffe house.
Ah,
I kept it.
that's so fun.
So that's the kind of stuff we have. A lot of times people don't want to talk. That's
Yeah.
fine. They can sit down, and sometimes stuff talks to them. They're looking through a bin full of flowers. What if something jumps out to them that they want to use? The next thing you know, they have a plan forming, and they're getting together, and then they start talking.
Yeah, it
A lot of
opens them
times
up.
if your hands are busy,
Yeah.
your brain's, cycling, processing through, it's very important to use your hands. And that's why art education is so important, because it brings you back into your body. You're not all up in your head all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You can put stuff on paper and put that down. That's so beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. That's a huge, huge book. And I love the idea of, instead of writing, hey, draw it out, color it out, do whatever you got to do. I'll have to try that one of these days. That is so cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So we're going to pivot a little bit here. And one question I like to ask everyone that I interview is why ICA, especially for those that will be involved with the Art Gala coming up. What made you say yes? And, what got you interested to partnering and working with us?
So I found out about ICA that day when I met you, but it wasn't my first time really working internationally or getting to know people internationally. I had my first job out of college. I was at a missionary travel agency. I had been sending teams of people from various nonprofits and organizations to all over the world, all over.
Very cool.
So anytime we had Africa trips, it was cool. I didn't get to go myself, but people would bring back stuff for me, like little thank you cards, that kind of thing. Just the differences between what we know of life here versus there. And my heart is for kids. And I know that a lot of places don't have the ability to come into a studio like this and just get to paint,
That's right. Yes.
The idea that there's someone out there that wants it and can't get it is kind of where I'm like, you know what? It would make a huge difference for them if they could.
Yes.
So we get a lot of donations, and sometimes we don't use them. We have no use for them. We don't always control what comes in. I'll walk in one day and someone left like 6 bins full of stuff, and I'm like,
oh wow.
Okay. And then I'm like digging through it. I'm like, can we use this? Where can this go if we don't use it? The idea that I could send art supplies to the Congo for kids, I was like, yes. The idea of just even putting a box together, knowing that someone's going to be able to use it. We get stuff for school supplies. No joke, and this isn't really school supply, but it might be helpful. I have about 40 clipboards.
Oh my goodness.
Don't know. I have 40 of them now. Like, it's that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Colored pencils. Oh my gosh, I'm drowning in colored pencils. So we get a lot of it, and I'm like, we just don't have any use for it here. So I could send it to other organizations that would have use for it, and I kind of love that.
That's beautiful.
So I just felt that little tug on my heart, and to know that I've already seen it in another way, and this is just another way of seeing children all over the world and being able to help, not even just in my community, but outside of it.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. And you really speak so many truths. Until you see it with your own eyes or have experienced it or engaged with someone who's in the working with children overseas, there's a huge difference, because here, what I try to tell people is that we have so many amazing organizations. We have government assistance for underserved children and families, which is great. And I'm not diminishing the need that is still here. There's still a great need.
Oh, yeah.
But now take that to another level overseas. And some countries, you don't even have that assistance really from the government as consistent as you do here. You don't have as many organizations that are able to provide a slew of services like we have here in the US. So having partners like you who are willing to support and help us out means a huge deal, because to your point, the children we support, there's nowhere for them to go to get free art supplies. We have to fundraise in order to purchase them in the DRC. And the children that made art supplies for the event, those supplies had to be purchased. Those were not donated. So having a partner like you who from time to time might be able to provide those art supplies for the children that are trying to refine their craft and improve and maybe teach others, it is huge. So thank you. Right. So excited again to partner with you. Now, I have a last question for you. This is a two-parter. As you know, the theme of our event is Nourish a Child's Dream. And we aim to empower underserved children here in Buffalo through scholarships. And we're going to make a donation to Buffalo Public School 84. For those who have watched my previous videos, yes, I know I sound like a broken record, but repetition is key. It is great to, share and reshare the purpose of our art gala. So we're helping underserved kids in Buffalo in that way. And in the DRC, part of the proceeds will help us purchase much needed bunk beds, tables, and chairs. If you were to go to our YouTube channel, we have a recently updated video of the renovations we're making to the building we purchased a couple of years ago for the children. Renovations are still in progress. It's going to take a few years to complete. We do have a room for the children where they can eat and do activities, but we don't have any tables or chairs. How crazy is that, right? So folks attending the event, please purchase your tickets, support this work, help us out. We will be getting them much needed tables, bunk beds, chairs, but also education. Education in the DRC is fee-based. So we'll be paying for tuition for our children in K through 12 so they can go to school. I do want to add that the government is making an effort to create or to provide free education for children in K through 6, but that is still in the works. Not every child is able to attend school for free. So the need is great. And for everyone planning on supporting this event, it is huge. And this is how we aim to nourish these children's dreams. So with that in mind, Jess, what is one piece of advice you can give to youth that are, going through the motions of pursuing their education as they're working towards their future and, as they prepare for their life ahead? What is a piece of advice that you would share with them as, they pursue their dreams?
Ooh, that's a good one. Considering I work with every age clear up through the kids that are in college pursuing their next level in their dreams. Well, don't give up. This is a 8-year-old, 9-year-old girl right here. Is me. So I meet girls like her all the time. Sometimes you might not feel like people are listening or you're not showing up in the space that you are. And it really does matter who is around you. It matters who you keep close to you. It matters who you connect with. Volunteer. Try something new. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? You fail at something new. Just being able to look at the world as something to learn and not always just an obstacle or a limit. You define your limits. I tried everything I could, every art product I could get my hands on. Sometimes art was not the focus, depending how you're raised and the environments you're in. But if there's a passion for it, don't ever give up on it. And sometimes even when you do, it still comes back around and gets you again.
True. True. And there's always something to gain out of that experience, right?
Yes.
So that's something to bear in mind too. And on one of the recent chats that I did, this often comes up. Don't give up, like you said, because in life, we all know you will stub your toe here and then. You will cross those trials and tribulations. So don't be afraid to try something out, because you might be surprised. You might end up, trying something that you really love and enjoy. So that testing and learning, that's key. That's key in life.
Mm-hmm. Always be ready to learn, and also know when to leave a situation. Like you say quit. Quit does not mean hold out on something that makes you miserable because you think you're doing the right thing. I actually have an exercise. I'll be doing a demonstration this Saturday about it, but came across something online and it says, I feel as useless as a white crayon. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, wow.
I'm an art educator. I love white crayons. But if you got a box of crayons and you got a white one and you don't know what to do with it because you're used to drawing on white paper, it kind of seems a little silly, right? So I said, well, if you're a white crayon and you're on a white piece of paper and you're not showing up, then you should either change your environment, go to a black sheet of paper and then show up on it, or learn something new. So if you put watercolor over a white crayon, the white crayon will show.
What?
So if you have a white piece of paper with a white crayon on it, put some watercolor, it resists because it's wax. So the white shows up.
Look
so
at
when
that.
you go in and you learn something new, you're adding the watercolor and you're showing up. So that's the idea, is that you either change your environment or you learn something new to show up in your environment. So yes. It's one of my favorite.
That's really good. That is so good. Yes. Thank you for dropping that another nugget on us. So that's huge. That's huge. So I'm going to move on to our the second part of this question. All right. Now, thinking about the nonprofit world. We're both founders of nonprofits. We've both been through that journey of starting a nonprofit, having to get folks to participate, to volunteer, to engage, and to support the work. What piece of advice do you have for someone today thinking about starting their own nonprofit? They may be feeling overwhelmed. They have this dream of, impacting their community in some shape or form. So what advice do you have for them as they pursue that dream?
Well, we're already doing it with one of our board members. So when I got started, I was like, one woman show wanted to be like, let's go, let's do this. And then, you have to bring on people. You need a really solid board to back you up. You are not a super freak human that can do all these things. It does take a village. It takes a village and everything. I learned that very quickly. And I think the number one thing I could say for those wanting to start a nonprofit, it is not, your expectations are going to change almost daily. I had this idea of what was going to happen, and I was frustrated and I had doubt and all this stuff that happened, but really you never know what's like, things will fall into your lap sometimes and you're like, this is great.
I know.
And other times, like,
so
you
true.
meet the one person that can build you drying rack shelves. Like, and you had no idea that he can even do that. And he just shows up and does it. You're like, stuff you need. Sometimes donations, even though, yes, we like money buys a lot of things that in a lot of ways to help us, but sometimes donations also come in form of service. They come in form of things that you didn't really know you needed until a problem happened. I think looking back, I wish I was more flexible with my expectations. I wish I would have realized that, you're going to have to take a step back sometimes. We just recently had to do that. Grant funding is a bear. Getting a good grant writer is amazing. I have one if you need one.
Please.
So I love her to pieces. So understanding that you could have a program that's really successful and you're killing it. Like last year we had a great after school art club program that we were doing. And then you don't get funding because of grant cycles, like a year and a half instead of every year. And next thing you know, you're not doing that program anymore. And you're kind of like, but that's what we did. That was one of the things.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to adapt. You have to be like willing to be like, okay, what are we going to do in this time that we really haven't put much focus on? Who can we work with? Like, you kind of have to realize it's not necessarily a setback. It could be just something that helps redirect or maybe defines more about who you are at your core. I mean, yeah, we love providing an after school art club that's free to students. That's like our number one, like, yeah, we did that thing, you know?
Right.
But what if we wanted to do more donating to other organizations? What if we wanted to we're doing a Christmas tree thing this year, donating art supplies to kids in need. We're like making, you know, a wish tree, like you fill it with art supplies and you donate it.
Yeah.
Like, there's other things that we could do that meets our mission. It doesn't have to be like live and die on one program.
Right.
So just being able to be flexible.
That is so true. That is so true. I as well had to learn the hard way to be flexible.
It's the best way to learn.
To be flexible and especially to accept help.
Yes.
Because when you first start out with a nonprofit, unless you already have, you know, a solid team, a whole team of people ready to go and to get started, you're frankly doing a lot of it on your own. And even now, from time to time, depending on the season, that might be the case. But as we were bringing on more volunteers and more help, I was so used to doing everything by myself that, you know, it was hard to let go. It was hard to delegate. And it got to a point where the team was like, Evelyn, you got to let go. Delegate. You know what I mean? You have to delegate. And that ties into self-care. It is so easy to get burnt out. So that's one thing I would add in there too, is, you know, trying to be intentional about your time as well, because it's so easy to give and give and give and give of yourself that you end up being empty, and you can't pour from an empty cup. So bearing that in mind as well is critical, just tying into what you were just saying. But thank you so much for sharing your journey, your story, everything that you're doing and have been doing for the community. Do you have any projects coming up that you want to let everyone know about, that they should be aware of, they can support?
Sure. I'm actually going to piggyback real quick off of the accepting help bit. So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Miss Kathleen Sargent, who is our vice president. She has her master's in counseling. She's going for her master's in social work. So when you see, I call her my other half. She's in here on open studio days, and we work really well together. If you have someone that could actually like be on your right hand side and helping you out with things is so important. She actually taught me a little bit about self-care the other day, and I've been doing this for years, and she did. And she's like, how about we just go get a favorite coffee, eat a good meal, watch a movie? Because I was like, we got work to do. She's like, maybe we shouldn't.
Right. Good.
A lazy slacker.
Yeah, that's
Sometimes
good.
you need reminders.
Yes.
So yes, very important. Things that are coming up. We are doing a supply drive. That's a biggie. September 10th. September 10th, it's in the afternoon. We are opening our doors and saying, hey, if you got it, bring it in. It's important to do supply drives on dedicated days, just because you don't know what you're going to get. And the more volunteers you have on hand to go through, it makes it a lot easier. Many hands make light work.
Sure does.
So, and the thing is, we get, like I said before, we get a lot of like office supply stuff. So we'll probably end up with boxes and boxes and boxes of things that we aren't going to actively use. So we get to then turn around and give it to you guys.
Beautiful.
And give it, you know, so we're able to box things up and ship it out to people that need it more than we do. So we do a supply drive. We try to do a couple of times a year. We try to do one. So that's a fundraiser coming up. We have bingo to next Tuesday, the 22nd.
Oh,
for the bingo night. So it's important to do fundraisers throughout the year. And sometimes they could be as small as, let's do bingo, or big as a gala.
Right.
Depending on what the need is at that time, and to plan ahead.
So true. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. And we'll be sure that your social media handles are included so everyone can follow and learn about all of that and support. And just to wrap this up, I just want to remind everyone, please get your tickets to the art gala. We desperately need your support so we can help underserved kids in Buffalo and the DRC. Your presence is really important on September 23rd, and we're going to have a good time. We're going to have Jess there doing her live art. We'll also have Anissa, who I interviewed earlier this week. She'll be live painting a handbag, which should be fun. And yes, so that's going to be exciting. We'll have violinist Henry Muhammad, so he'll be present as well performing. We'll have a fashion meets art segment that you guys don't want to miss. I'll leave it at that, no more details. And an after party. Of course, there'll be food, there'll be drinks. We'll have a good time. Get your tickets, please. So we'll see all of you guys there. And before we wrap up, do you have any parting words, Jess?
No, I just can't wait to be there, to get creative and talk to everybody and see everything in motion. I just love it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, and we will see you on the 23rd. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.